I never thought the last words my own son would say to me would be, "Die alone, you pathetic old man." But that was exactly what happened in that Chicago hospital in December 2023. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, William's Revenge Stories, and hit the bell because every day we have new stories. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city you are watching from. My name is Robert Miller. I am 68 years old, and for 5 decades, I built a fortune that I thought would be the perfect legacy for my only son. How wrong I was. It all started on December 15th, 2023, when the stabbing pain in my abdomen became unbearable. I had been admitted to City General Hospital for 5 days when Andrew finally showed up. He did not come out of fatherly concern. He came because he needed money again. "Dad, I need you to lend me $50,000, he said without even asking how I was feeling. His eyes had that desperate look I knew too well. It is urgent. I have problems with some very dangerous people. Andrew Miller, my 42-year-old son, had become a stranger to me. When his mother, my dear Helen, died of cancer 15 years ago, I promised I would take care of him forever. But caring did not mean feeding his vices. Loan sharks, again, Andrew? I asked, although I already knew the answer. How many times have we had this conversation? His face hardened. "Do not lecture me, old man. I just need the money. I will pay you back later." Later, I repeated with bitterness. It was the same word he had used when I lent him $15,000 for his supposed import business that never existed. The same word when I helped him with $8,000 to pay off his car debts. There was always a later that never arrived. No, Andrew, not this time. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched his face go from pleading to disbelief, and finally to the purest fury I had ever witnessed. "Are you telling me no?" His voice rose so high that the nurse in the hallway turned to look at us. "Dad, they are loan sharks. Do you understand what that means? Do you want them to break my legs? I understand perfectly what it means." I replied with the calm that only age gives. "I also understand that this is the 3rd time in 2 years that you come with the same story, and each time the amount is higher." Andrew approached my bed, his fists clenched, trembling with rage. "All my life you have given me everything I asked for, and now when I really need you, do you abandon me? I am not abandoning you, son. I am teaching you. Teaching me what to be scared to death. To get my face smashed in his screams had already attracted the attention of other patients. You have millions in the bank properties all over Chicago, and you deny me 50,000 miserable dollars. It was true. I had 3 apartments for rent downtown, a house in the suburbs, and enough savings to live comfortably for the rest of my days. But money was not the problem. The problem is not the money, Andrew. The problem is that you are 42 years old, and you keep behaving like an irresponsible teenager." Those words were the straw that broke the camel's back. "Go to hell, Robert," he shouted, using my name as if it were an insult. "I am sick of your moral lessons. I am sick of you." He headed for the door, but before leaving, he turned and threw the words that would change our lives forever. "Die alone, you pathetic old man. In the end, everything you have will be mine anyway." The slam of the door echoed down the hallway. I stayed there, lying in that hospital bed, with my heart beating so fast I thought I would have another attack. But it was not fear I felt. It was something much more dangerous, a cold and calculated determination that I had not experienced in decades. Rose, the nurse who had witnessed everything, approached with a worried expression. "Mr. Robert, are you okay? Do you need me to call the doctor?" "No, Rose," I replied, surprised by the firmness of my own voice. For the first time in a long time, I see things with total clarity. That night, while the hospital fell into silence, I made the most important decision of my life. My son had shown his true face, and I was going to teach him a lesson he would never forget. The early morning of December 16th passed without incident, but I knew Andrew would return. I knew him better than he knew himself. When things got difficult, he always came crawling back, hoping my fatherly love would overcome my common sense. I was not wrong. At 11 the next morning, he appeared in the doorway of my room. This time, he did not come alone. Jessica, his wife, accompanied him with an expression that mixed shame and desperation. "Good morning, Robert." Jessica greeted me, avoiding my gaze. In 15 years of marriage, she had never managed to call me Dad, as I would have wished. "Jessica," I replied politely. "Andrew." My son looked haggard, as if he had not slept. He probably had not. Loan sharks do not usually give extensions for sleepless nights. "Dad, I come to apologize for yesterday," Andrew began, although his tone sounded more rehearsed than genuine. He was nervous, scared. I should not have spoken to you like that. And I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "And well, I still need your help. Jessica and I have been talking all night. We can offer you real collateral this time. The lake house as collateral if you want." Jessica looked at him surprised. Evidently that part had not been discussed. "The house I gave you as a wedding gift in 2008, I clarified. Do you intend to use my own gift as collateral to ask me for more money?" "It is not like that, Dad. It is just that." "That what, Andrew?" "That you consider I have the obligation to get you out of all your problems. That my function in your life is to be your personal bank." The tension in the room became palpable. Jessica twisted her hands nervously while Andrew struggled to maintain his composure. "Look, Dad," he said finally, "I know I have made mistakes, but this time is different. These are very serious guys. We are not talking about a credit card debt. How much have you lost on those online betting platforms, son?" The color drained from his face. Jessica turned to him with a look of shock. "How do you know?" "Because I am not an idiot, Andrew. Because for months I have been seeing the charges on the joint accounts we still share. Because your spending pattern changed drastically since you discovered those apps." Jessica stood up from the chair as if propelled by a spring. "Online betting. You told me it was for the import business." Jessica let me explain. "No," she shouted with a fury I had never seen in her. "You lied to me. For months you have been lying to me." "Enough already," roared Andrew, losing his temper completely. "I am sick of justifying myself to everyone." He turned to me with bloodshot eyes. "And you with your air of moral superiority, always judging, always criticizing. You know what? I do not give a damn what you think." Several patients from the adjacent rooms had come out into the hallway, attracted by the screams. Rose and another nurse approached quickly. "Sir, you are going to have to lower your voice or leave the hospital," Rose warned. "Perfect," Andrew shouted. "This place stinks anyway." He approached my bed, leaning over me with a look of contempt I will never forget. "Listen to me. Well, you miserable old man, you can stay here with your money and your bullshit morality. But when you die, and I hope it is soon, everything you have built will be mine. And I am going to squander it on whatever I want just to screw with your memory." Jessica tried to stop him pulling on his arm. She followed him like a zombie, not looking me in the eye. Before disappearing through the door, I heard her whisper to him, "I cannot believe what you just did." His answer was clear and ruthless. It was time the old man knew who was in charge here. I stayed there in that hospital bed, surrounded by witnesses to the worst humiliation of my life. Some patients returned to their rooms, murmuring among themselves. Others gave me looks of pity that hurt more than any insult. Rose approached with a worried expression. "Mr. Robert, I am so sorry. You should not have witnessed something like that." "Rose," I told her with a slow voice, "I want you to know that what you just saw and heard could be very important in the future. Could you remember every word?" She looked at me, intrigued. "Of course, Mr. Robert." "But why?" "Because my son just made the biggest mistake of his life," I replied, feeling a cold fury settle in my chest. "He was going to pay for every one of those words." That afternoon, while I contemplated the ceiling of my room, I knew with absolute certainty that the relationship between Andrew and me was over forever. But that did not mean I was going to sit idly by. On the contrary, it was time to show him who was really in charge. The hours following Andrew's explosion passed in a strange silence. It was not the silence of defeat, but something much more dangerous, the silence of planning. While my body recovered in that bed at City General, my mind worked at full speed, processing decades of wrong decisions and misunderstood love. Dr. Anthony White arrived for his evening rounds, finding me more alert than I had been in days. "Mr. Robert, I am glad to see you looking better. The tests show considerable improvement," he informed me while reviewing my chart. "However, the staff has told me you had a complicated visit." "Dr. White," I said, sitting up slightly, "I need to ask you something important. In your medical opinion, is my mental capacity completely intact?" The question surprised him. "Of course your cognitive faculties are perfect. Why do you ask?" "Because I am going to make very important decisions in the next few days, and I need medical record of my mental lucidity." He nodded slowly, beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. "I can issue a medical certificate when you need it." That night, when the hospital plunged into its usual nightly routine, I asked Rose to come closer. During the last few hours, I had observed her behavior. She was a woman of integrity, hard-working with solid values, exactly the type of person I would need as a witness. "Rose, have you been working here long? 15 years, Mr. Robert. I have seen everything in this hospital. Then you will know how to recognize when a son treats his father badly." She lowered her gaze uncomfortably. "It is not my place to judge the family relationships of patients. I am not asking you to judge. I am asking you to remember, to be a witness to the truth when necessary." Rose studied me with curiosity. There was something in her expression that told me she understood perfectly where this conversation was going. "Mr. Robert, can I speak honestly? I beg you. In 15 years, I have seen many families in crisis. I have seen desperate children, stubborn parents, complicated situations, but never ever had I witnessed such cruelty from a son towards his father. The words he used that has no justification. Her words confirmed what I already knew. I was not being dramatic or exaggerated. What had happened was objectively unacceptable. Would you be willing to testify about what you saw and heard if necessary?" Without hesitation, she responded firmly. During that long December night, while Chicago slept under a light winter drizzle, I remained awake, mentally reviewing the last 20 years of my life. Every unpaid loan, every broken promise, every time I had justified Andrew's behavior, telling myself it was temporary, that he would change, that he just needed more time to mature. I remembered when he was 6 and begged me to take him to the park. I remembered his first steps, his first words, the first time he called me Dad. I also remembered the day Helen died, when he clung to me crying, promising we would always be a united family. At what moment had that sweet boy turned into the ruthless man who had humiliated me publicly? The answer came like a blow. The moment I stopped being his father and became his ATM. At dawn on December 17th, I took a decision that would change our lives forever. I asked Rose to bring me my mobile phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Nelson and Associates. "Good morning. Good morning. I need to speak with Jim Nelson. This is Robert Miller, client for 15 years. One moment, Mr. Robert." Jim had been my lawyer since I bought my first investment property in 2008. A meticulous, discreet man with an impeccable reputation in the city. If anyone could help me execute what I had in mind, it was him. "Robert, I am glad to hear from you. How are you? I heard you were hospitalized." "Jim, I need you to come to the hospital today. We are going to make important changes to all my legal documents." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are we talking about a will?" "We are talking about a complete restructuring. Will, power of attorney, bank accounts, properties, everything." "Robert, are you sure these are major changes?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." "Very well. I will be there at 3 in the afternoon. I will bring everything necessary." After hanging up, I leaned back on the pillow, feeling a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in decades, I was going to make decisions based on justice and respect, not on emotional blackmail and manipulation. Rose entered with my breakfast, noticing immediately the change in my mood. "You look different this morning, Mr. Robert." More determined. Why am I Rose? After 68 years of life, I am finally going to do the right thing. And what is the right thing? Teaching my son that actions have consequences, that respect is not optional, especially towards the one who gave you life, and that money must never, ever be more important than dignity. She smiled with approval. My mother always said children who do not respect their parents respect no one. Your mother was a wise woman. The rest of the morning I spent mentally preparing the list of changes I would implement. Every decision was calculated. Every movement had a specific purpose. It was not revenge I sought, it was justice. It was teaching, even if it was late, the lessons I should have taught years ago. When Jim Nelson appeared in my room that afternoon, carrying his leather briefcase and with a serious expression, I knew the moment to act had arrived. "Jim, what we are going to do today will change my life and my family's forever. I am here to advise you and execute your will, Robert. But first, I need to be absolutely sure that you are taking these decisions with full mental capacity and without coercion. Dr. White examined me this morning. I have the medical certificate that proves my complete mental lucidity." Jim nodded, opening his briefcase. "Then let's proceed. Tell me exactly what you want to do." While I began to explain my plan, I felt a deep calm settling in my chest. After years of being treated like a bank, I was finally going to recover my dignity, and my son was going to learn the hardest lesson of his life. While I waited for Jim to organize the documents on the side table of my room, my mind inevitably traveled to the past. Not to the distant past of Andrew's golden childhood, but to the last 5 years when the warning signs had been there screaming the truth I refused to see. Before proceeding with the legal changes, I told Jim, "I need to tell you the whole story. You need to understand why I'm doing this." He settled in the chair, adopting the active listening posture he had perfected in decades of legal practice. It started in 2019. I began feeling how each memory became sharper as I verbalized it. Andrew came home completely desperate. He told me he had invested the family savings in cryptocurrency and had lost everything. $23,000 disappeared overnight. "Did you verify that information?" Of course not. He was my son. Why would he lie to me about something like that? The irony of my past naivety hurt physically. I gave him $25,000 to cover the losses and another $5,000 so Jessica would not find out. Andrew begged me to keep it our secret. Jim took notes meticulously. Were there more occasions? Oh, many more. In March 2020, he needed $12,000 to save his job. Apparently, he had made a mistake in an audit and needed to cover the deficit before he was fired. I gave him the money without asking questions. The pandemic had been a particularly productive time for Andrew's excuses. I remembered how he had taken advantage of the general economic crisis to justify an endless series of financial emergencies. In August 2020, it was $8,000 to avoid repossession of his car. In December of the same year, another $15,000 because Jessica needed an urgent private medical operation. In May 2021, Robert Jim interrupted me gently. "Did you ever verify any of these stories?" The question hit me like a punch. No, never. Because every time I considered doing it, he told me something like, "You do not trust your own son or dad. It hurts me that you doubt my word." And Jessica? Did she know about these loans? That is the most disturbing part, I admitted, feeling shame mixed with rage. 6 months ago at a family meal, Jessica mentioned casually that she had never needed any private operation, that her health insurance had covered everything perfectly. Jim stopped writing and looked directly at me. "Robert, Are you saying that my son had lied to me blatantly for years, that he had used my love and trust to fund something I was completely unaware of? It was then that I decided to investigate on my own, a decision that arrived 2 years late, but finally revealed the magnitude of the betrayal. I hired a private investigator. I continued. John Myers, recommended by an acquaintance. I asked him to follow Andrew for 2 weeks, simply to understand what he was really spending the money on. And what did you discover? That my son had developed a severe addiction to online betting. Not only that, but he frequented a casino downtown 3 times a week. I also discovered he had asked for loans from bookies on several previous occasions using my name as a reference. The detective's report had been devastating. Photos of Andrew entering and leaving the casino at 2 in the morning. Screenshots of his activity on platforms where he had lost astronomical amounts. Testimonies from casino employees who knew him by name. But the worst, I continued feeling how the betrayal renewed with every word, is that he had been lying to Jessica too. She genuinely believed I gave him money for family emergencies. Andrew had made me an involuntary accomplice to his deceit. How much money are we talking about in total? I paused, calculating mentally. In 5 years, I gave him approximately $140,000 in loans that were never repaid. Money I had saved for decades, working 14 hours a day in my carpentry shop. Jim whistled softly. It is a considerable amount, but it is not just the money, Jim. It is the systematic betrayal. It is having turned my fatherly love into a source of funding for his vices. It is having destroyed my trust in a deliberate and calculated way. I sat up in bed, feeling how indignation gave me renewed strength. Do you know what hurt me most about the detective's report? A conversation John managed to record at the casino. Andrew was talking to another player about his strategies to get money. He literally said, "My old man is naive. I just have to cry a little, and he gives me what I need. It is easier than stealing." The silence that followed was heavy and significant. Jim had stopped taking notes and observed me with a mix of understanding and professional indignation. "Why did you not confront him with this information? Because I am a sentimental idiot," I replied bitterly. Because I kept waiting for him to change on his own. Because I believed if I gave him one more chance, maybe he would remember the sweet boy he had been. And what made you change your mind? The humiliation yesterday, the pure cruelty in his words, the absolute contempt for the man who gave him life and who has funded his vices for years. But above all, his final threat, his threat. He told me that when I died, everything I have built would be his, and that he was going to squander it just to screw with my memory. Those were his exact words. Jim closed his notebook and looked at me with a grave expression. "Robert, I understand perfectly why you want to make these changes. In my legal experience, I have seen many cases of family financial abuse, but rarely with this level of premeditation and cruelty. So will you help me?" "Not only will I help you," he responded with determination, "but I will make sure these documents are completely legally armored. Your son will not be able to challenge a single line of what we are going to do." While Jim began to prepare the new documents, I felt something I had not experienced in years, the satisfaction of taking control of my own life. For too long, I had been a victim of emotional manipulation. It was time to become the protagonist of my own story. And this time the story would have a very different ending. "Very well, Robert," said Jim, as he spread several documents on the table. "We are going to proceed methodically. First, I need you to explain exactly what you want to achieve with these changes." I straightened up in bed, feeling a mental clarity I had not experienced in months. I want Andrew to learn that his actions have real consequences, but I also want to ensure my fortune serves something useful, not to fund more addictions. Perfect. Then I proposed the following structure, began Jim drawing a diagram while he spoke. First, we completely revoke the current will. Second, we establish a charitable foundation. Third, We transfer all assets to that foundation with certain specific conditions. What kind of foundation? A foundation to help young people with gambling addiction problems. Will it be tremendously ironic and educational? At the same time, the irony did not escape me. The money Andrew hoped to inherit to continue betting would serve precisely to help others overcome that same addiction. But will it be completely legal? Will he not be able to challenge it? Jim smiled with the confidence of someone who had handled similar cases for decades. Robert, in this state, you have the right to dispose of your assets. We can structure it strategically. Explain to me. We can structure it so Andrew technically has access to a trust, but strictly conditioned. That is, he can access the benefits only if he meets certain specific requirements. What conditions complete treatment for his gambling addiction certified by professionals, stable work for at least 2 consecutive years, and most importantly, a public and genuine apology for his behavior towards you. The strategy was brilliant. It was not blind revenge, but educational justice. Andrew would have a real chance to redeem himself, but he would have to earn it. And the properties, we will transfer them to the foundation immediately. The apartment downtown where you currently live will remain as your life estate, but then it will also pass to the foundation. The other 2 apartments and the lake house will generate income to fund the charitable activities. Rose entered discreetly to bring my evening medication, but I noticed she was paying attention to our conversation. Her presence reminded me of something important. Jim, I also need to change all power of attorney documents. Andrew currently has the power to make medical and financial decisions in case I become incapacitated. Of course. Who do you want to designate as the new agent? I looked at Rose, who had demonstrated more integrity and care towards me in 3 days than my own son in 3 years. Rose, I told her. Could you come here a moment? She approached with a curious expression. Yes, Mr. Robert. Would you be willing to accept being my legal agent? For medical decisions and emergency administration in case I become incapacitated. Her eyes widened in surprise. Mr. Robert, It is an immense honor. But are you sure you barely know me for a few days? I know you enough to know you are more trustworthy than my own son. You have shown more affection and respect towards me in these days than he has in years. Jim intervened professionally. Rose, what is your current employment situation? I need information for the documents. I work here at the hospital for 15 years. I'm a registered nurse. I am 48, single, with no major family burdens. Perfect. It is exactly the profile we need for this type of responsibility. During the next 2 hours, we worked meticulously on every document. Jim explained every clause, every condition, every legal protection we were implementing. This document showed me. It establishes that if Andrew tries to challenge the will or the trust, he automatically loses even the possibility of accessing the conditional funds. And if he tries to pressure me to change these documents, that is why we are going to include a protection clause against coercion. Any attempt at pressure, blackmail, or threat towards you will automatically activate the total revocation of his rights. And we have witnesses. He pointed to Rose, who can attest to both his previous behavior and your mental state at the moment of signing these documents. Dr. White chose that moment to do his evening rounds. Seeing the scene, he approached with a professional expression. Good evening. I hope I am not interrupting something important. On the contrary, Doctor, I replied, your arrival is perfect. Could you examine me and certify my mental state again? I am signing important legal documents. The doctor proceeded to an exhaustive exam. Questions about time and space orientation, recent and remote memory, logical reasoning capacity, understanding the consequences of my decisions. Mr. Robert, he concluded after 20 minutes, your mental capacity is completely normal for your age. You are perfectly capable of taking any legal decision. I will draft the corresponding certificate. While the doctor wrote the certificate, Jim showed me the final document. Robert, this is what we have created. the Helen Miller Foundation for the Prevention of Gambling Addiction, in memory of your wife. Your entire estate will pass to this foundation, except a small monthly pension for you and the life use of your current apartment. The name of the foundation moved me deeply. Helen would have been proud to know that her memory would serve to help others overcome the addictions that had destroyed our son. And Andrew will have the opportunity to access $50,000 annually for 10 years, but only if he meets all the conditions we have established. In total, he could receive $500,000 if he really changes his life. And if he does not meet the conditions, then that money goes automatically to expand the Foundation's programs. Either way, the money will serve to combat gambling addiction. Rose had listened to everything with growing fascination. Mr. Robert, it is a brilliant strategy. You are giving your son a real chance to redeem himself, but you are also protecting your fortune from being wasted. Exactly, I confirmed. It is not revenge, it is educational justice. Jim began to organize all the documents for signature. We just need the signatures and 2 additional witnesses for everything to be completely legal. When will everything be legalized? As soon as we leave the hospital, we will go directly to the notary. By tomorrow afternoon, all these changes will be officially registered. While I signed every document, I felt as if I were closing a painful chapter of my life and opening a new one full of purpose and recovered dignity. Andrew had sown winds of contempt and cruelty. Now he would reap storms of real consequences, but he would also have the opportunity to redeem himself if he really wanted to do it. The ball was in his court. December 18th dawned gray and rainy, but I felt clearer than ever. The documents were signed, but the most delicate part remained, executing all the changes without Andrew suspecting what was happening. "Good morning," Mr. Robert Rose greeted me, bringing breakfast. "How do you feel today?" "Like a man who has finally regained control of his life," I replied, surprised by the energy in my own voice. Jim had agreed to come early to finalize the transfer details. Meanwhile, I had an important call to make. I dialed the number of my bank, where I had kept my accounts for more than 20 years. "Good morning, this is Robert Miller. I need to speak with the manager, Michael Stone." "One moment, Mr. Robert." Michael and I had developed a relationship of trust over the years. He had witnessed the growth of my fortune, and also the strange transfer requests Andrew had begun to make recently. "Robert, I am glad to hear from you. How are you? I heard you were hospitalized." "Michael, I need to inform you of important changes in my legal situation. Today we will be in your office with my lawyer to modify all access to my accounts. Any specific problem?" "Let's say I have discovered my trust was misplaced. Andrew will no longer have any type of access to my finances." There was a significant pause. Michael was too professional to make comments, but his silence spoke for itself. "Robert, I must inform you that your son has been making inquiries about your accounts recently. Obviously, we have not provided him information, but his questions were specific. What kind of questions he wanted to know about procedures in case of mental incapacity, about power of attorney, about how to access funds if you could not do it personally." My blood froze in my veins. Andrew had not only been planning to live off my inheritance, he had been preparing to accelerate the process. "Michael, this is more urgent than I thought. Can you preventively block any unauthorized access attempt?" "Of course, I will immediately implement an additional security protocol. No one except you personally will be able to perform operations." When I hung up, I felt a mix of rage and validation. My decision had not only been correct, it had been necessary for my own financial survival. Jim arrived at 10 in the morning with a folder full of additional documents. "Robert, I have been working all night on the technical aspects. We have a perfect window of opportunity." "What do you mean?" "The Registry for Charitable Foundations has an expedited process if you meet certain requirements. We can have the Helen Miller Foundation officially constituted by this afternoon. So fast. When there are significant asset donations, the authorities facilitate the paperwork. Besides, the charitable profile of addiction prevention is a priority currently. We spent the next hours refining every detail. Jim had even prepared the bylaws of the foundation with specific objectives and very clear control mechanisms. Look at this. He showed me a document. I have included a clause that allows you to work as a paid consultant for the foundation. You will receive $3,000 monthly for your services besides the use of your apartment. Is it legal completely? In fact, it is recommended that the founder maintain certain active participation. That way you have dignified income and life purpose. At 2 in the afternoon, we left the hospital. It was strange walking the streets of Chicago after 6 days of confinement, but I felt renewed with a clear mission. Our first stop was the bank. Michael Stone received us personally in his office. "Robert, these are very significant changes," he commented while reviewing the documents Jim presented. "They are necessary changes," I replied firmly. "I want all my accounts transferred to the name of the foundation, keeping only a basic personal account with $10,000, and the properties. The deeds will be modified today. 3 properties will pass completely to the foundation, and my current apartment will remain as a life estate." The banking process took 2 hours. Michael was meticulous, ensuring every transfer was perfectly documented. "Robert," he told me at the end, "in 30 years of banking experience, I had never seen such a well-planned asset restructuring. It is evident you have thought of every detail." From the bank, we went directly to the notary. Frank Davis had been our family notary for years, but he had never handled documents of this magnitude. "Mr. Robert," he told me, seeing the volume of papers, "this represents the largest transfer I have processed this year." "Are you completely sure, Frank?" "I have never been more sure of anything. These documents represent my real legacy, helping others and teaching responsibility to my family." The notary process was exhaustive. Frank read every clause, explained every implication, ensured multiple times that I understood the consequences of my decisions. "Very well," he said finally. "From this moment, the Helen Miller Foundation is officially the owner of assets valued at approximately $2.3 million. While we returned to the hospital to collect my personal belongings, Jim made an important observation. "Robert, have you considered how you are going to communicate these changes to Andrew?" "Not yet. Part of me wants him to find out gradually when he tries to access the money and discovers it is no longer available. That could be counterproductive. He could try legal actions by surprise." "Do you have any suggestion? I think you should confront him directly, but in a controlled environment, in my office, with witnesses, with everything legally recorded." The idea made sense. A planned confrontation would be more effective than allowing Andrew to discover the truth by accident. "When do you propose doing it tomorrow morning?" "We will tell him you need to sign some additional documents related to your hospitalization. When he arrives, we will explain the new reality." That night, back in my apartment, after a week in the hospital, I sat in my favorite armchair and contemplated what I had achieved in just 2 days. My fortune was protected and would serve a noble purpose. My dignity was restored. Andrew would have a real chance to redeem himself, but only if he was willing to change fundamentally. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Dad, it's Andrew." My heart raced, but I kept my voice calm. "Andrew. Dad. I have been thinking about what happened at the hospital. I think we both said things we shouldn't have. Can we talk?" "Of course. In fact, I need you to come tomorrow to my lawyer's office. There are some papers I must sign, and your presence would be useful." "Papers? What kind documents related to my hospitalization?" "Nothing urgent, but it is better to have everything in order." "Sure, Dad. At what time?" "At 10 in the morning, Jim Nelson's office. You know where it is. I will be there." "And Dad?" "Yes, thanks for giving me another chance." When I hung up, I smiled sadly. If Andrew knew that tomorrow would really be his last chance to demonstrate who he really was. The final confrontation was scheduled, and this time I held all the cards in my hands. The early morning of December 19th was one of the longest of my life, not because of physical pain, but because of the anticipation of what was to come. At 6 in the morning, I was already fully awake, mentally reviewing every detail of the plan we would execute in a few hours. Rose arrived at 7 for her morning shift, finding me already dressed and prepared. Mr. Robert looks different this morning, more determined. Today is the day my son will discover who his father really is, I replied, adjusting the tie I had not used in a week. Jim appeared punctually at 8, carrying his briefcase and with an expression of absolute professionalism. Are you ready for this, Robert? I have been preparing all my life, although I did not know it. Before leaving for his office, we decided to make a strategic stop. I needed to pick up some personal documents from my apartment, but mainly I wanted to ensure the stage was perfectly set. Jim, does your office have a recording system? Of course. For cases like this, it is essential to have an audiovisual record of everything said. Perfect. I want every word documented. We arrived at Jim's office at 9:30. His secretary Karen, a woman of about 50 with years of experience in complex family cases, already had everything prepared. Mr. Robert, she greeted me with genuine respect. Mr. Nelson has explained the situation. I want you to know I admire your decision to teach family responsibility. Thanks, Karen. Your support means a lot. At 5 minutes to 10, Jim discreetly activated the recording system. The cameras were positioned so they would capture both my expression and Andrew's during the entire conversation. Punctually at 10, Andrew knocked on the door. Karen showed him into the meeting room where Jim and I waited for him. Good morning, Dad. He greeted me with a smile that seemed rehearsed. Jim, thanks for receiving us. Andrew, sit down, I indicated, pointing to the chair across from us. He settled in, clearly uncomfortable with the formality of the environment. His eyes moved nervously between Jim, the documents on the table, and my serious expression. Well, Dad, what documents do you need to sign? I hope it is nothing complicated. Andrew. I began keeping my voice calm but firm. Before talking about documents, I need us to have a very important conversation about what? About what happened at the hospital 3 days ago. His face changed immediately. The smile disappeared, replaced by a defensive expression. Dad, I already told you I'm sorry. I was desperate. I did not think what I was saying. You did not think what you were saying? I interrupted him. Andrew, you said specifically, die alone, you pathetic old man. In the end, everything you have will be mine anyway. Well, yes, but what is there any justification to publicly humiliate the man who gave you life, to threaten to squander my memory after I die? Andrew shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Dad, I was very pressured. The loan sharks were threatening me. The bookies who were threatening you for the gambling debts you have accumulated for years, I added, seeing his face crumble. How do you know that you are addicted to gambling? That you have been lying to me systematically for 5 years? That you have used my fatherly love to fund your vices? Jim intervened professionally. Andrew, your father hired private investigation. We know exactly what you have spent the $140,000 he has lent you in the last years on. The color disappeared completely from Andrew's face. Dad, I can explain everything. Explain what? That you lied to me about cryptocurrencies, that you invented Jessica's operation, that you have been using my name as a reference with illegal lenders. I did not know you knew. Of course you did not know, because you have been so sure of my naivety that you never considered I could discover you. Andrew tried to stand up, but Jim stopped him with a gesture. Andrew, your father has not finished speaking. Do you know what hurts me the most? I continued. It is not the money. It is not even the lies. It is that you turned my love into a tool of manipulation. It is that you destroyed the trust I had placed in you as my only son. Dad, we can fix it. I can change, I promise you. Like you promised to change the other times. Like you promised to return the money. You never returned. Jim took the floor. Andrew, Your father has made important decisions about his assets, decisions that are directly related to your behavior. What kind of decisions? It was my turn to speak. I have created the Helen Miller Foundation for the Prevention of Gambling Addictions. All my fortune has been transferred to that foundation. The silence that followed was absolute. Andrew looked at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. What does that mean? It means there is no inheritance to wait for. It means the money you hope to waste will now serve to help others overcome the addiction you have never wanted to face. No, you cannot do that. I am your son. I have rights. You have limited rights, intervened Jim, and your father has respected those rights. But he has also exercised his right to freely dispose of his assets. Andrew, I continued, it is not the end. It is an opportunity. You can access a part of the fortune, but only if you meet specific conditions. What conditions? Complete treatment for your gambling addiction, stable work for 2 consecutive years, and a public and genuine apology for how you have treated me. Andrew remained motionless for several minutes. I could see his mind working, processing the implications of what he had just heard. And if I do not accept those conditions, then that money will be destined to expand the Foundation's programs. Either way, it will serve to combat gambling addiction. Finally, Andrew exploded. This is revenge. You're punishing me for a moment of desperation. No, son, I replied with genuine sadness. I am teaching you. I am giving you the opportunity to become the man your mother would have wanted you to be. Andrew got up abruptly, knocking over the chair. I am not going to accept this. I am going to challenge everything. You can try, said Jim calmly. But I warn you, if you initiate legal actions against your father, you will automatically lose even the opportunity to access your conditional share. I do not give a damn. Andrew headed for the door, but before leaving, he turned to me with an expression of pure hate. This is not going to stay like this, old man. You do not know who you are messing with. And he left, slamming the door so hard it resonated through the whole office. Jim and I remained in silence for several minutes. Do you think he will try something? I asked him. Probably, but we are prepared for anything he attempts. That afternoon, while I walked the streets of Chicago, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. I had lost my son, but I had recovered my dignity, and for the first time in years, the future belonged completely to me. The 3 days following the confrontation in Jim's office passed in an unsettling silence. Andrew had not contacted me again, but I knew he was plotting something. I knew him too well. When he felt cornered, his first reaction was always attack. On December 22nd, while I ate breakfast quietly in my apartment, the phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. Robert Miller. Yes, it is me. This is Lawrence Field's lawyer. I represent your son, Andrew Miller. We need to speak urgently. So Andrew had decided to play the legal card. Interesting. Of course, but any legal communication must be through my lawyer, Jim Nelson. Mr. Miller, this could be resolved amicably if... Through my lawyer, I repeated firmly and hung up. Immediately I called Jim. The legal maneuvers have begun. It was predictable. Who is the lawyer, Lawrence Fields? I know him. He is a specialist in will challenges, but he does not have a very good reputation. Andrew could not get a better lawyer, probably due to lack of funds. What strategy do you think they will try? Most likely they will allege temporary mental incapacity due to your hospitalization. It is their only possible card. That afternoon, Jim officially received the lawsuit. When I arrived at his office to review it, I could not help smiling at the evident desperation in the arguments presented. Look at this, Jim pointed out to me. They allege you were under strong medication that affected your judgment capacity, that the decisions were made under emotional pressure, and my favorite, that I exercised undue influence over you to benefit my own interests. Do they have any chance of success? None. We have multiple medical certificates, audio and video recordings, independent witnesses. But most importantly, we have the record of his own words threatening and humiliating you. What is the next step? We counterattack. Not only are we going to defend your right to freely dispose of your assets, but we are going to demonstrate exactly why you made these decisions. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, I received an unexpected call. It was Jessica. "Robert, please do not hang up. I need to speak with you." Her voice sounded broken, different from all previous conversations. "Jessica, tell me. Andrew has told me what happened. About the foundation, about the conditions. You need to know something important." "I am listening." "Andrew lied to me about everything. For years he told me you gave him money for family emergencies. I believed you were generous with us. I never knew he was feeding a gambling addiction. Why are you telling me this now? Because this morning I found casino receipts in his jacket. Receipts from this week, Robert. Even after everything that has happened," he continues, "betting. The information hit me like a punch. Andrew had learned nothing. His regret in Jim's office had been completely false. Jessica, are you willing to testify about this?" "Yes. In fact, I want to ask for your forgiveness for all these years. If I had known the truth, you have nothing to apologize for. You were also a victim of his lies. Rabah, there is something else. Andrew is planning something for after Christmas. He has been talking to strange people, making calls at all hours. I think he is desperate." After hanging up, I immediately called Jim to inform him of the conversation. His response was immediate and strategic. "Robert, this changes everything. Jessica can be a key witness, not only to past lies, but that Andrew continues betting even now. That completely destroys any argument that he has changed or deserves special consideration. What do you propose? A final meeting. We officially summon all parties. Andrew, his lawyer, Jessica Uis, we present all the evidence at once. We put them against the wall with irrefutable facts. When December 27th, we will give them the ultimatum. They withdraw the lawsuit, and Andrew accepts the original conditions. Or we file a countersuit for defamation, fraud, and financial abuse. December 27th arrived gray and cold, but I felt more prepared than ever. Jim's office had been converted into a makeshift courtroom, with cameras, recorders, and all documents organized meticulously. Andrew arrived accompanied by Lawrence Fields, a man of about 60, with a nervous expression. Jessica arrived separately, clearly determined to tell the truth. Gentlemen, began Jim formally. This meeting aims to definitively resolve the dispute between Robert Miller and his son Andrew, avoiding a prolonged judicial process. Lawrence Fields tried to take control of the situation. Mr. Nelson, my client, is willing to negotiate, but the current conditions are unacceptable. Mr. Fields, Jim interrupted him. Before talking about negotiations, you need to listen to new evidence that has surfaced. Jim activated the recorder and began playing the phone conversation with Jessica. Her voice filled the room, recounting Andrew's lies about money, confirming she had never needed medical operations, describing recent casino receipts. Andrew's face crumbled progressively. Lawrence Fields took notes, frantically, clearly understanding his case was falling apart. "Jessica," I addressed her directly, "can you confirm before everyone present that Andrew continued betting even after knowing the consequences of his actions?" "Yes," she replied with a firm voice. "I found receipts from the downtown casino from last week. He lost $2,300 in a single night." Andrew exploded. "Jessica, how can you betray me like this?" "I betrayed you?" "Andrew, you betrayed me for years. You made me an involuntary accomplice to your lies, Andrew." I intervened, keeping my voice calm. "This is your last chance. Withdraw the lawsuit. Accept the original conditions to access your part of the trust, and commit genuinely to change your life." "Never!" he shouted, rising from the chair. "I prefer to be left with nothing than to humiliate myself before you." Lawrence Fields tried to calm him. "Andrew, consider the options." "No, this manipulative old man is not going to control my life." Jim smiled coldly. "Perfect. In that case, tomorrow we will file our countersuit for fraud, defamation, and financial abuse. We will seek not only to protect Robert's assets, but also compensation for emotional damages and recovery of the $140,000 obtained fraudulently. What stammered Lawrence Fields? We have complete evidence of 5 years of systematic fraud. Andrew will not only lose any right to the fortune, but could face criminal charges. The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew looked at me with a mix of hate and terror, finally understanding he had completely underestimated the situation. You have 24 hours to decide, I told him finally. Tomorrow, at this same time, either you accept the original conditions or you lose everything forever. Andrew left the office like a hurricane, followed by his lawyer, visibly defeated. Jessica approached me before leaving. Robert, you did the right thing. Andrew needs to learn that actions have consequences. That night, while I contemplated the Christmas lights of Chicago from my apartment, I knew I had won much more than a legal battle. I had recovered my dignity, my purpose, and my future. December 28th dawned with a call I did not expect. It was Lawrence Fields Andrews' lawyer, and his voice sounded completely different from the feigned security of the previous day. Mr. Miller, my client wishes to withdraw the lawsuit. Completely, yes, and he accepts the original conditions you established. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief because the legal battle had ended. Sadness because my son had needed to reach the edge of the precipice to begin to understand reality. Is Andrew willing to meet all requirements? Treatment for addiction, stable work, public apology. He says yes. Does he want to speak with you personally to apologize? Lawrence, let it be clear, this is not a negotiation. Either he fulfills exactly everything agreed, or there is nothing more to talk about. Understood perfectly. That afternoon, Andrew appeared at my apartment. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. He had lost weight, had deep circles under his eyes, and his clothes were wrinkled. He seemed to have aged 10 years in a week. Dad, he told me with a broken voice, can I come in? Go ahead. He sat on the living room sofa, the same one where he had played as a child, where we had watched movies together when Helen was still alive. The irony of the moment did not escape me. Dad, I have come to ask for forgiveness. For real this time. For real this time. Does that imply the other times you were lying? Yes, he admitted, lowering his head. I have always been lying. Even when I said I was sorry, deep down, I was calculating how to get more money from you. His honesty surprised me. It was the first time in years Andrew admitted the truth, without trying to manipulate it in his favor. What has changed? Jessica left me, he said, and for the first time I saw real tears in his eyes. This morning she took Dylan and Alice. She told me she cannot keep living with a liar, and she is not going to allow the children to grow up seeing how I destroy my life. The blow had been where it hurt most, his family. Jessica had turned out to be stronger than any of us had imagined. And last night, after the meeting with the lawyers, I went to the casino. I lost the last $800 I had left. I stayed there until 5 in the morning without money, without family, without nothing, and for the first time in years, I saw myself really as I am. And how are you, Andrew? An addict, a liar, a son who has betrayed the only man who always believed in him. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand as he used to do when he was a child. Dad, I know I do not deserve another chance. I know I have exhausted your patience and your love, but if you give me one last possibility, I swear by Mom's memory, I am going to change. Are you willing to meet all conditions? Without exceptions, without negotiations. Yes, all. The treatment for addiction will last at least a year. You will have to attend individual and group therapy. You will have to account weekly for your activities and expenses. I accept it. You will have to get a real job, not one of those businesses you always invent. A job with fixed hours, real boss payroll. Provable. I will do it. And the public apology. I do not mean saying sorry here in private. I mean acknowledging publicly before Jessica, before your children, before Rose, and everyone who witnessed your behavior at the hospital, what you have done. I will also do it. I stood observing him for several minutes. There was something different in him, something I had not seen in years. He seemed defeated, but in a way that was perhaps necessary to start rebuilding himself. Andrew, there is something else you must know. What? If you breach any of these conditions, if you relapse into gambling, if you lie a single time more, there will be no third chances. The money will be permanently destined to the foundation, and you will never be able to access it again. I understand. Do you really understand? Because for years you have thought your status as a son gave you automatic rights over my fortune. Those times have ended forever. I understand, he repeated with more firmness. 3 days later, on December 31st, I received a call that surprised me pleasantly. It was Jessica. Robert, I wanted to inform you of something. Andrew enrolled yesterday in an addiction treatment program at the City Medical Center. Is it true? Yes. And also he came to apologize to me. Not the type of manipulative apology he used to give. A real apology admitting specifically every lie he had told me. How did you react? I told him I appreciated his honesty, but apologies do not erase 5 years of deceit, that if he really wants to recover his family, he will have to demonstrate with actions, not words. It seems correct to me. Robert, there is something else. The children want to see you. Dylan and Alice have been asking for you constantly. I explained to them in a way appropriate for their age what had happened between you and their father. How did they take it? Dylan, who is already 15, understood perfectly. He told me Grandpa did the right thing. Dad needed to learn. Alice is smaller, but equally perceptive, but wants to see you. I would love to see them. Is it okay if I bring them tomorrow afternoon? It is a holiday. It would be nice if they spent some time with you. On January 6th, 2024, Jessica arrived with Dylan and Alice. Seeing my grandkids after weeks of family tension was like a balm for the soul. Grandpa Dylan told me with seriousness, improper for his age. Mom explained what happened with Dad. I want you to know we understand why you had to do what you did. Alice, smaller but equally perceptive, hugged me tight. Grandpa, is Daddy going to get well? That depends on him, honey. But now he is trying to heal, and that is what is important. While the children played in my living room, Jessica and I spoke in the kitchen. Do you think Andrew can really change? She asked me. I do not know, I admitted honestly. But for the first time in years, he is facing real consequences. He no longer has easy money. He no longer has excuses. He no longer has anyone to blame except himself. The therapists in the program say the first step to recovery is hitting rock bottom completely. Then maybe there is hope. That night, after Jessica took the children, I sat in my apartment reflecting on the extraordinary changes of the last weeks. I had lost the relationship I had with my son, but maybe, just maybe, I was gaining the opportunity to meet the man he could become. The phone rang. It was Andrew. Dad, I wanted to tell you today was my 5th consecutive day in the treatment program. I'm glad to hear it. And I got a job interview for tomorrow at a construction company. It is physical work, fixed hours, basic salary, nothing glamorous. Honest work is never dishonorable, Andrew. I know it is costing me, but I know. When we hung up, I felt something I had not experienced in years regarding my son, a small spark of genuine hope. The consequences had been hard, but finally, they were teaching the lessons that blind love could never teach. The first months of 2024 brought a completely new routine to my life. For the first time in decades, my days were not marked by the anxiety of waiting for Andrew's next financial crisis, but by something much more rewarding, building the Helen Miller Foundation. The foundation's office was established in a modest but dignified space downtown. I hired 2 employees, Mary Jo, a psychologist specialized in addictions, and Charles, a social worker with experience in reintegration programs. Mr. Robert, Mary Jo told me during our first work meeting, it is admirable what you are doing. Transforming a painful family experience into help for others demonstrates exceptional spirit. Mary Jo, I do not do it for greatness. I do it because I understand the problem from the inside. I have lived the consequences of gambling addiction in first person. That personal experience will be invaluable to help the families we serve. During February, we began to receive the first cases. Desperate parents whose children had emptied family accounts, wives who had discovered hidden debts of thousands of dollars, young people who had lost jobs, relationships, and future due to online betting. Every story reminded me of my own experience with Andrew, but also gave me renewed purpose. The pain I'd lived now served to relieve the suffering of others. Charles Defroin told him one afternoon while we reviewed active cases, I want us to implement a specific program for families of addicts. They need as much help as the addicts themselves. It is a brilliant idea, Mr. Robert. Families are usually the most silent victims. Meanwhile, I received weekly reports on Andrew's progress. His therapist, Dr. Karen Smith, called me every Friday to update me on his evolution. Your son is showing genuine commitment to treatment, she informed me at the beginning of March. He has completed 8 weeks without betting. He is attending religiously all sessions and has started working at the construction company. And emotionally, it is a difficult process. He is facing years of self-deception and justifications, but for the first time he is being completely honest with himself and us. Do you think the change is real? Mr. Robert, in my experience, when an addict loses everything he valued and still continues in treatment, the chances of recovery increase significantly. In mid-March, I received an unexpected visit. Dylan, my 15-year-old grandson, appeared at the Foundation's office after school. Grandpa, I wanted to see you work. How did you know I was here? Mom gave me the address. She says you are doing something very important. I showed him the facilities, explained our programs, introduced him to Mary Jo and Charles. Dylan listened to everything with a maturity that impressed me. Grandpa, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do you think Dad is really going to change? The question hit me for its directness and honesty. Dylan deserved an equally honest answer. I do not know Dylan. Your father is doing everything right now, but addiction is a very complex disease. What I do know is that for the first time in years, he has a real chance. And if he does not change, then we will have done everything possible, and you and Alice will have to learn to build your lives without depending on your father's decisions. Dylan nodded with a seriousness that broke my heart. He was too young to be processing these issues, but life sometimes does not respect childhood innocence. Grandpa, I want you to know something. I am proud of what you did. I know it was difficult, but someone had to stop Dad. Those words came from a 15-year-old young man, but had the wisdom of decades. In April arrived the moment I had waited for and feared so much, Andrew's public apology. He had completed 3 months of treatment, had been working in construction for 3 months, and his therapist considered he was ready for this crucial step. The meeting was organized in Jim Nelson's office with all witnesses present. Jessica Dillon, Alice Rose, who had generously agreed to come marry Joe from the foundation, and of course Jim and me. Andrew arrived, punctually dressed in his work clothes, clearly nervous but determined. I want to start by asking forgiveness from everyone present. He began maintaining eye contact with all of us. For years I have lied, manipulated, and betrayed the trust of the people who loved me most. He addressed Jessica specifically. Jessica, for 5 years I lied to you about the money I asked my father for. I made you an involuntary accomplice to my deceits and put the stability of our family at risk. Then he turned to his children. Dylan, Alice, your father has been a bad example. I have taught you that lying and manipulating are acceptable ways to get what one wants. I was completely wrong, he addressed Rose. Rose, you were witness to my most despicable behavior at the hospital. The words I used towards my father were unforgivable, and I regret you had to witness that cruelty. Finally, he looked directly at me. Dad, I turned your fatherly love into a funding tool for my vices. I betrayed a lifetime of sacrifices and dedication. I humiliated you publicly when you were most vulnerable. There are no excuses for what I did. And more importantly, he continued, I want everyone to know my father is not punishing me, he is teaching me. For the first time in my adult life, I am facing the real consequences of my actions, and that is saving my life. The silence that followed was heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of difficult truths finally expressed. Jessica was the first to speak. Andrew, I appreciate your honesty. It is an important step. But apologies are just words. Real changes are demonstrated with time and consistent actions. Dylan added, Dad, I am willing to give you another chance, but this time it will be different. You are no longer just my father. You have to earn my respect. Alice, although smaller, said, Daddy, I want you to get well, but I do not want Mommy to cry anymore. I was the last to respond. Andrew, today you have taken an important step, but it is just that, a step. The road is long and will require daily consistency. I understand, Dad, and I want you to know that regardless of whether I ever access the inheritance money, I am going to continue with my treatment. I have discovered I need it to live, not to get money. That night, while I walked the streets of Chicago towards my apartment, I reflected on the extraordinary changes of the last months. I had a new life with genuine purpose through the foundation. I had recovered an honest relationship with my grandkids, and maybe I was starting to meet the true Andrew for the first time in decades. The future remained uncertain, but it was no longer marked by fear and manipulation. For the first time in years, tomorrow seemed promising to me. 2 years later, in December 2025, while I contemplate the Chicago skyline from the terrace of the new headquarters of the Helen Miller Foundation, I can affirm that taking that drastic decision at the hospital was the best thing I did in my life. The foundation has grown beyond my most optimistic expectations. We have helped 347 families affected by gambling addictions. We have implemented prevention programs in 23 high schools in the state, and our outpatient treatment center attends 85 people weekly. Mr. Robert Mary Jo tells me while we review the annual reports. The data is impressive. The success rate of our programs exceeds the national average by 40%. The secret I answer her is that we understand the problem from within. We are not theorists. We are survivors. Charles enters the office with a smile that has become habitual in him. Mr. Robert, I have excellent news. The state has approved the grant to expand our programs to other counties. How much? $800,000 for the next 3 years. We can open centers in other cities. I lean back in my chair, feeling deep satisfaction. The money Andrew wanted to waste on his vices is now multiplying to help thousands of people. And how is our most special case evolving? I ask, referring to Andrew, without naming him directly. Your son completed 2 full years without betting. Yesterday, informs Mary Jo, consulting his file. He has completed all modules of the treatment program, maintains the same job for 20 months, and just finished a construction foreman course. In the family situation, Jessica agreed to try couples therapy 6 months ago. They are progressing slowly, but they are progressing. The children have started spending weekends with him regularly. It is an evolution I have followed from a distance, maintaining the delicate balance between support and independence. Andrew needed to demonstrate he could change without external pressure, without the expectation of immediate rewards. Do you think he is ready to access his conditional inheritance? Charles asked me. That is a decision I will make next month, when exactly 2 years have passed since he started his treatment. The truth is, Andrew has met all the conditions we established. He has completed treatment, maintained stable work, made the public apology, and most importantly, has demonstrated real behavioral changes over a sustained period. But there is something else that influences this decision. He no longer needs the money in the same desperate way as before. His salary as a foreman allows him to live with dignity. He has developed a healthy relationship with money. And more importantly, he has found his self-esteem in real personal achievements, not in material possessions. The phone rings, interrupting my reflections. It is Dylan, my grandson, who is now 17 and studying his last year of high school. Grandpa, can I come see you this afternoon? I want to tell you something important. Of course, Dylan, everything good, everything excellent, but I prefer to tell you in person. Dylan arrives at 5 in the afternoon, accompanied by Alice, who is now 14, and has inherited her mother's determination and her grandfather's intelligence. Grandpa begins Dylan with solemnity. I've decided what I want to study at university. Tell me social work specialization in addictions. I want to work with you at the foundation when I graduate. The declaration moves me deeply, not because of the prospect of working with my grandson, but for understanding he has found his calling inspiring himself to transform painful experiences into help for others. Dylan, are you sure it is a demanding career? Emotionally exhausting sometimes. Completely sure. I have seen what you have achieved these 2 years. I have seen how Dad has changed thanks to the work you do here. I want to be part of that, Alice adds. And I want to study psychology. Mom says when I am older, I will be able to help too. Seeing my grandkids planning their futures around values of service and help to others confirms to me that the difficult decisions I made have generated positive waves that transcend my own life. And how is your father? I ask them. Very well, responds Dylan. He is no longer the same man he was before. He works hard, comes home tired but satisfied, and for the first time in my life, when he says he is going to do something, he does it. And Mom, she is considering getting back with him, says Alice, but she says she needs more time to be sure the changes are permanent. It is prudent of her. Grandpa Dylan tells me seriously, Dad never asks you anything about the money. He does not even ask if you are going to fulfill your part of the agreement. Do you think he has really changed? It is a perceptive question from a young man who has matured observing family complexities. Dylan, your father has demonstrated something I thought I would never see. He has learned to value himself for his actions, not for his possessions. That is the deepest change a person can experience. That night alone in my apartment, I make the final decision about Andrew's inheritance. Jim will come tomorrow to formalize my decision. It is not a decision about money. It is a decision about principles, about the kind of legacy I want to leave, about what example I want to give my grandkids, about how people in a family should be treated. Andrew has met all conditions, but more importantly, he has recovered his dignity as a human being. He has learned that respect is earned, that trust is built with time and consistent actions, and that true family love includes limits and consequences. The money he will receive will allow him to improve his quality of life, perhaps buy a small house, ensure his children's education. But it will no longer be a crutch to sustain a life without purpose. It will be a tool to build the future he himself has begun to design. In the end, this story is not about money, inheritance, or revenge. It is about something much deeper, the possibility of human transformation, when real consequences replace permissiveness, when true love includes the courage to say no, and when pain becomes purpose. Andrew taught me, without knowing it, that sometimes being a good father means being willing to be considered a bad father temporarily. He taught me that protecting someone from the consequences of their actions is not love, it is complicity. But I taught him something too, that it is never too late to change, that dignity can be recovered no matter how low you have fallen, and that sometimes the most painful crises are the most valuable gifts life can give us. Tomorrow, when Jim comes to formalize the transfer of funds to Andrew, I will not be handing money to my son, I will be celebrating the rebirth of a man who once was lost and who found his way back home. And that, believe me, is the most valuable legacy any father can leave. The story that began with the cruelest words a son can say to his father ends with the most important lesson life has taught me. True love sometimes hurts, but it always heals. And Helen, wherever she is, can finally be proud of the man her son has become. If you like this story, hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thanks for watching.